this is going to be great.
Welcome to the White House Pod with David A.R.
I'm going to finish what I started.
It's not easy. It's simple. Do you know that we have an author coming on here that has sold more than 200 different books, including 21 New York Times bestseller with sales of more than 73 million copies? Ladies and gentlemen, it's Jerry Jenkins. Jerry, every morning when you wake up, is that what you hear? Is it just like as you crawl out of bed, are you like, all of a sudden there's just applause and the world is thanking you for getting up?
Yeah, I do have applause piped into the bedroom for that purpose. That's really helpful. And then I greet my wife and she brings me back down to earth.
All right, so where are you coming from? Where are you at these days?
I'm in Colorado Springs. We've been out here. We're Midwest people, but we've been out here 25 years now. And speaking of Left Behind, August will mark 30 years since the first title was released. I can hardly believe it.
Since the first book or the first movie?
First book.
Okay. Do you even count the movies?
Were there movies? How about those Cubs?
I met you when I was 18 years old. Did your son tell you this?
I remember that, actually. You interviewed me at Moody Bible Institute.
You actually remember that?
No, but I pretend to.
Oh, okay. I was like shocked. I actually believe that.
Jerry cheated. He watched his son's episode.
Oh, is that what happened? He was like, oh. Well,
I read a lot of fiction. So.
Your son had said that you had met like a lot of the Moody students over the years to encourage them.
Yeah, I worked at Moody for over 30 years and then was on the board of Moody for 18 years. And I always enjoyed, I was an executive in publishing. I was vice president for publishing for most of that time. But I loved being invited to classes to speak on the publishing business or in writing and always loved to encourage students. And as you know, I teach writing online now. So I'm trying to continue that.
My dad actually, my dad worked at Moody. In fact, he met my mom there, and that's and then when she was out there, and I think she was even working there too. And then my whole family, my brother and my sister and everybody graduated from there. But what happened to Dallas? Like, why you couldn't get him to go to Moody Bible Institute? Or had something happened at Moody to where you were now like, you were not happy with the school that you were not sending your own children to?
Well, it's kind of a bizarre story, but I was not a terribly successful student at Moody. When I started when I was 17, I did not last one full year. So years later, after working there and climbing the ranks to vice president for publishing, and then retiring and joining the board, I eventually became chairman of the board, and I would still see profs that knew me back then, and they would see me in the hall, and they would just go, no way. But I actually taught a writers' conference at Northwestern College in Minnesota one time. It was such a beautiful campus. And when Dallas was looking for schools, I said, you should at least check out that campus. It's beautiful. And that's where he went. That's where he met Amanda, and it was great. And Moody didn't have a film or theater major, and Northwestern had the theater major that he wanted.
Did you ever become a Vikings fan with your time in Minnesota?
Can't say that I did. I'll tell you, when we moved to Colorado, I quickly became a Broncos fan because Manning was here, and
it made it
easy.
Won.
It was kind of fun. Yeah.
What were you before you were a Broncos fan? Chicago?
Bears.
A Bears fan. Okay. Yeah. Well, the Bears have been struggling for many years. It's understandable. Although, were you there? You had to be there when I was there. You were there during the Bears Super Bowl in the 88. Walter Payton and all those Jim McMahon years and the fridge. And
I was, in fact, a lot of people don't know this, but about a third of my books are nonfiction, and a lot of those are with superstar athletes. And I did Walter Payton's book. I did Mike Singletary's book.
I did not know you did Walter Payton's book.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, wow. I met him one time. I was a valet, because how Moody, somehow like the valet companies, the hot valet companies in Chicago would always hire the Bible students there because they could trust, that you would get into, Walter Payton's Porsche or whatever Ferrari or, and Michael Jordan's and all those guys, and not steal stuff. So
Right.
I worked at Didka's, America's Bar, like Harry Carey's, like all those places. And I met Walter Payton one night. I was running down. It was like 3, 4 in the morning, and freezing, of course, in the middle of the winter. And I just see these 3 very large figures coming at me and down this like bizarre back alley. And I'm running, and I'm like, oh, man. And it's like 3 in the morning going, oh, and I got to run by them. And sure enough, I ran by them, and the guy turns around and he goes, hey, kid. And I turn around, and it's Walter Payton and his probably 2 of his linemen. And he goes, where'd you get those shoes? And it was during the kangaroo, when the kangaroo things were happening. And he was the brand guy for it.
Yeah.
So I have his little signature on that little ticket.
Very cool.
But you wrote his book, so you got to hang out with Walter for how long, or did you write it after he had passed?
No, that was a book that was my idea. I remember trying to chase him down and talk to his agent.
Was that hard because he's fast?
And his mother answered, and she said, "This is his mother. I'm visiting from down south." And I said, "Well, I thought we had an appointment." And she said, "Well, I'll have him call you back." So we got together, the next week, and while we're working, the phone rings. He picks up the phone and he goes, "No, he's not here, but this is his mother." And I realized I'd been talking to Walter last week too. I remember we did a picture together too for the Tribune wanted to do a story on Payton working on a book, and I saw all these pictures in his den of famous people or not so famous people or friends. And he's smiling beatifically, and his friends are all like in abject pain. They're like going, "Ah," like that. I'm like, what is happening here, And so he tells the photographer, count to 3. And when he gets to 3, he grabs my left behind and pinches as hard as he can. I had 5 bruises on my rear end for weeks. And of course, the picture is me going, so that's Walter.
All right. So how long after those, when you were writing those books, did you? How did you come up with Left Behind? Like you just happened to be reading the Book of Revelation, and God said, "Boom! I want you to write the fiction part of this." Or
yeah, I wish that had been it. And actually, I had always been fascinated by the Book of Revelation and by the idea of the rapture. I can remember.
Did you watch The Moment After? Was that it? Did you watch The Moment After first, and then decide to write the Left Behind books?
Yeah, I've seen them all. But I can remember even as a young teenager, I was a junior counselor at a camp, and I was probably 13 or 14, and so I had some 9-year-olds that I was in charge of, and for their devotionals, I would tell them rapture stories. At that time, but I one time got a call from my agent. And he asked me if I knew Tim LaHaye, and I said, I don't know him, but I've published him. I know of him. Of course, he was a best-selling nonfiction writer. And he said, well, I got to get you 2 guys together because he's a best-selling nonfiction author with a great fiction idea, and you're a novelist with no ideas. So let's get you guys together. And so we got the story slightly apocryphal, but we got together. And we hit it off immediately. He was the same age as my parents. And so there was a father-son dynamic there. And he was also raised in Michigan, led to faith by his mother the way I was. And we agreed, I'm not a theologian or a scholar, but as I say, I was raised in that tradition. So I agreed with his view on the end times, but it was his idea. And the best part about it was he didn't want to try to help write it. He said, I'm not a fiction writer. You write it, but I'll just keep you on pace theologically and from a scholarly standpoint. And it was a great marriage that way.
Was that like laziness, or was that because he believed in your skill, or he just really, had no ideas to put into a story, or he was just too busy?
I think it was mostly my agent telling him to stay away from the writing side of it.
Otherwise, you would sign on.
Yeah. Now I think he had actually tried to write it himself and did not get good response from publishers or agents,
Yeah.
and said, "All right, clearly I need a writer," and then he was really great about that. I don't think he's certainly not lazy. He was a house of fire.
Well, he wrote a lot of books too, right?
He did.
Okay, so how did that? So was that friendship? Did it just start? Or was it just like more of a? You said he was like a father or mentor figure in a way. Did you guys all of a sudden were you hanging out? Like going out for whatever baseball games and and having a good old time, or was it more? You would show up at 2 p.m. and have a mentorship of what you're supposed to do, and then you're almost like a student, where you then were released to go off and write, and then you would come back in weeks.
It really became a friendship pretty quickly because we really did hit it off. And
Before the first book had come out, or after it?
Yeah. When we first started working, we just kind of clicked, and I can remember playing golf with him, and both of us are so bad. I mean, I think one time I played with him, I missed a hole-in-one by 6 strokes. But
that sounds like my golf game.
He was a fun guy. He liked my sense of humor, and I admired him. And so, and then once the books became popular, we did a lot of media together. So a lot of traveling. We actually did a not coast to coast, but a long bus tour. To visit bookstores and to do media and stuff like that. So, yeah, it became a 2 decades long friendship. Yeah.
Where when you guys started writing, where did you guys live in the same city? What city is this?
I lived in Chicago and he was in California. Yeah.
Okay. So it was always like a trip to see one another. Did he come out or did you go out to California?
We did it both ways. Yeah.
Oh.
I did most of the traveling, but he would come sometimes because he got around. I mean, he was speaking all over the place.
Got it. After the first book came out, how long did it take before it revolutionized all of fiction in.
Yeah, it was really interesting. The first year, one of the things Tyndale did was they brought the first book out in hardback, which Christian fiction was not in hardback back then. Everybody printed trade paperbacks. And they said, we really think this is going to work, and so we're going to print it in hardback. And it was a big book. And it did around 88,000 copies in hardback the first year, which is astounding. I mean, that's good for any book.
Yeah.
And
was that on the New York Times bestseller with those numbers?
No, the first one did not make it at that point. But then the second one, really started to grow.
How long after to do the first and second?
I remember I got about halfway through the writing of the first book. We thought the first book was going to be it. I thought I was going to do the whole story in the first book. Got halfway through it. I'd only covered about 2 weeks of the whole, tribulation and everything.
Yeah.
And so then they said, okay, let's make it a trilogy. So I did one. I think we were doing 2 a year for a while. But what really was bizarre was after 3, and Left Behind was my 125th book. Now, I had some successes. I had done Billy Graham's autobiography. I'd done Oral Hershiser. It was my first New York Times.
That's the one I met you on, that I read and made the paper on.
Yeah. Right. And so I'd had some success, but never anything like this. And I can remember Tyndale sent me a framed presentation of the first 3 covers because they had reached a total of 1 million sales. 3 hardback books selling 1 million. And you know Dallas's story of how failure led to his success. With me, and I was roughly the same age at that time that Dallas was when The Chosen hit. I think it was good that it happened to us in our 40s and not in our 20s, and But I get this presentation, this framed, 3 covers, and I remember feeling pretty good about myself. I'm like, I really pulled something off here. I mean, I don't know anybody who sold, 1 million copies of anything. And so I'm feeling pretty good. And my editor from Tyndale calls me and he says, have you seen the sales for book 4? And I said, well, book 4's not out yet, right? It comes out in 2 weeks. He goes, right. He said, check Amazon. So I go on Amazon and it's #1. And Amazon publishes hundreds of thousands of books.
Yeah.
It's number one 2 weeks before release. And it had the absolute opposite effect on me that presentation did. It broke me. I mean, I can remember thinking, all right, sorry. I will never take credit for this again. This is clearly not me. This is a God thing. I'm going to hang on for dear life. And then it just exploded. I mean, the first title was averaging 275 sales a month for a couple of years. Every time a new one would come out, the first one would sell more. And, you know, as I mentioned, we're coming up on 30 years since the first title came out. That series is still selling about 10,000 units a month to this day.
Are there other like franchises that have tried to do, you know, to make their own Left Behind? I'm not talking about our movies, you know, The Moment After, 1, 2, and 6, The Mark Unleashed. That's not what I'm referring to. I'm talking about books, like you know, that have tried to, you know, Left Behind is obviously just the title alone is exactly what it is. Right. Have they tried to like draft off of you?
Yeah,
those books?
There were a lot of people. In fact, I would hear from publishers all the time and agents, and they'd say, I got another proposal that promised this is going to be the next Left Behind. That's what people would refer to. And some have been decent and done well, but nothing has come close as far as the phenomenon that it was. I don't know what, we still can't account for.
How many books are in there
There's 16 titles in the adult series.
And on the 16th book, did you know that this was the last one, or were you just like, I gotta write something different?
I was actually writing. I was doing 2 a year for a while, and then my wife actually, the only time in my career she's done this, she went behind my back and called my editor and said, "You're going to kill the goose that's laid the golden egg if you don't slow him down. You know, 2 a year is too much." And I was suffering.
Yeah.
And so they stretched it out. So I was doing one every 9 months or something like that. And it really helped. She's my hero. But when we got to the 16th book, Tyndale wanted more, because every time a book would come out, it would sell several million the day it came out. And they were giving their employees big bonuses, and they were, you know, building buildings and all kinds of stuff. And we finally had to say, you know, we've told the story. I said, if we do one more book, the subtitle is going to have to be Milking It for All It's Worth. So we decided, all right, we did 12 books to tell the story, then 3 prequels, and then a final sequel to tell the Millennial Kingdom.
So then you go into movie producing with your son, with Dallas, right? At some point in time here. The Left Behind, how did the Lalonde brothers end up getting the Left Behind rights to make the first Left Behind movie, of which they made like 9 of them, but I think they're all from the first book, aren't they, or second book?
Actually, we were pitched by Cloud 10.
Cloud 10. That's what. Well, the Lalonde, yeah. Aren't the Lalonde brothers with Cloud 10? I thought.
I guess they are, but this was a group out of Kentucky, young guys.
Like Joe? Was it Joe?
Yeah.
Joe.
And those guys, and they were hungry, and they pitched. They were really impressive, but they weren't big enough to do it, and they got the Lalondes involved, and you know, that's when they started. When they got the rights, yeah.
And that's what happened. They ended up getting the rights that way, and then they worked with the Lalondes over there to make those movies. They only made like out of how many books did they make? 1 or 2?
They only have the rights to the first 2 books, but I think there have been 5 movies, 5 Left Behind movies
off of those first 2 books.
Yeah,
it seems like it. Nick Cage, I think, was the last one.
No, actually, Kevin Sorbo was the last one.
Oh, wow. I didn't even know that
one came out. Sorbo directed and starred in the last one.
Okay. Well, how do you? Okay, so with that, because that was such a front and center. Tell me if I'm off base and I can't talk about this, but it was such a front and, you know, a thing about. I don't think it was exactly what you guys were hoping it was to be. Right, to be. There was a lawsuit, and
you can't really call it fraud. I mean, they wanted it to be a big blockbuster. It just wasn't. That's, you know, but.
Well, they had the whole thing, too, about the money side. Like, I remember this. Tell me if I'm off base, too. I feel like I just remember all the rumors were going on, in the advertising that it was a $20 million movie or $17 million movie, and then it came out, and then it seemed like it was only a $4 million movie or something like that. There was a budget discrepancy too.
It was something like that, but and I don't want to sound like I'm the only spiritual one, but I didn't believe that we had the right to sue brothers, and I think that's biblical. And frankly, I tried to talk Dr. LaHaye out of it and couldn't. I did not join the suit. I did have to testify in the thing because there were conversations they wanted reported. But it was really interesting. At one point, they were pushing so hard for me to join the suit that they claimed that the judge was saying I had to. And it didn't sound right to me.
When you say they, you mean Dr. LaHaye's side or on? Okay, because I don't know why the other people would want you to join that suit.
LaHaye's side, they wanted me in there because they knew it would look bad if I didn't, and they said, well, now the judge is saying you have to, and I went, really? And so I checked the records and everything, had my counsel check them, and what the judge said was, if you can't get Jenkins in this suit, I'm going to throw it out. He didn't say I had to. So I wrote directly to the judge, which is, you're not supposed to do that. But I said, I realize I'm breaking protocol here, but let me tell you why I'm not joining this suit. I said, I think if Dr. LaHaye wants to go through with it, he should go ahead. I'm not gonna fight it, and I'll testify, I'll do whatever. But the reason I don't join, and I quoted the scripture, and it was interesting because the day we got to court, the judge said, his preliminary remarks were, the only guy who's acting like a Christian in this whole thing is the guy who's not wanting to join the suit. It was a kind of an unfortunate season there. But
yeah. Well, and that lasted for a while. I mean, it was, it's one of the, it's an interesting thing. We got sued, for the God's Not Dead movies. I mean, lots of lawsuits came up, but never did it come into the public eye. And so, like I think back, because obviously my dad was a pastor and I grew up in a church, and so there's a few lawsuits that or things that pop into the media in the faith world, specifically that leave a mark to where they're so front and center that now all of a sudden everybody's involved. Obviously, with social media now, more and more of those things leak out, But back then, that was such a big thing. You must have been asked by this like every single time you turned around about the lawsuit. How long did the lawsuit last before it was finally done and dissipated and people forgot about it?
I don't even remember. I know it was well over a year, and it was noisy. And I thought it was an embarrassing thing for the church.
Yeah. What do we have a new book coming out? What's going on with obviously The Chosen? We all know about that. But what is this Dad Coach that you co-authored? Is this a new thing?
It is new. And I did a book 10 years ago with the manager of the St. Louis Cardinals, who then became manager of the Kansas City Royals. And he had written a letter to Little League coaches and parents about what's wrong with the way most kids are coached. And he said, only 1 in a million of these kids will ever make the big league. But they're all going to be grown-ups. So teach them character. He's an outstanding believer and really outspoken guy. Very impressive. And somebody started taping this letter that he wrote in locker rooms and calling it the Matheny Manifesto. So he called me one day and he said, is there anything to this? Is there a book here? And I read the manifesto. And I said, there absolutely is. There's no question. And he said, well, I don't want to call it the Matheny Manifesto. And I said, yes, you do. I said, it's being that it's a memoir and it's going to be first person from your standpoint. That's the first thing you can say. You can say, I didn't want to call this the Matheny Manifesto. It sounds braggadocious and I wouldn't call it that, but that's what it's known by. Well, it became a New York Times bestseller and it did really well. And so now he's got this idea for a book to dads who get pressed into service coaching their own kids and other people's kids. So he calls it the Dad Coach. And it's virtually the same theme as the Matheny Manifesto, but he's teaching baseball. He says, if you don't know the game, here's the game. And he's got QR codes in the book where, you're reading along and you say, here's how to teach your kid to play third base or to steal second base or to hit the cutoff man. You put your phone on that QR code, and there he is on a video showing you how to do it. So it's a great little title, and we're excited to see what happens with it.
Now, will you do one for every sport, from soccer to football to all the ones, or do you have to see how the first one does?
I'm willing, but no. No, I think this is it.
Badminton, the dad coach, badminton.
Well, that'd be fun. Yeah.
Jerry, are things called Dare to Dream? What do you tell people out there who have dreams and desires? And you've written so many books, so many bestsellers. You've been an inspiration to me, just as a man of God. What do you leave our folks with?
Well, I appreciate that comment. I teach writers online, and I always try to tell them, you see the number of books I've had and how visible my career has been. That's not the goal. The goal isn't quantity, the goal is quality. And dreams, yeah, I think we all need dreams, but we also need to get our butt in the chair if we're writers, or out of the chair if we're doing something else, and do it. I mean, it sounds like a cliche, but so many people talk about the things they're dreaming of doing and they never do them. They just talk about them. And my line to writers is, dreamers talk about writing, writers write. That can apply to any profession. So take that for what it's worth.
It's pretty good. Jerry, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. And your family is a godsend to the world and to me as well, individually.
I appreciate you having me on. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Jerry. Have a good day. See ya. It kind of makes sense. You got 200 books, 73 million copies sold. The man is a man of great wisdom. And it's cool that even I met him when I was 18, and he was the same, just giving and encouragement for me then and even now. If you haven't subscribed, first of all, to our YouTube and or to Spotify, we would ask you to do that. And we would also ask you guys, can you comment? Can you leave comments? Do you think Jerry Jenkins should write another Left Behind book? Please let us know. And furthermore, turn on your notifications, for crying out loud, because we want to come into your life every week as soon as we drop this baby, the new episode, because it's just for you. God bless you guys. Make it a great day, and we'll talk soon. See you next week if your notifications are on. Otherwise, you will not see us next week. They're like, yeah, we don't need to see you next week. No, you do. You do.